I'm joined today by Jonathan Leftwich, who I've had the pleasure of knowing a number of years now, and who I have the privilege of considering a dear friend. He has built and led engineering teams at companies such as Shipt, Fetch, and most recently Tilled, to name a few. He is one of those engineering leaders that checks his ego at the door, a true empathetic leader who developers love working with and for. And again, I'm so grateful to have you in my orbit. So thank you for joining me today on Cupalo Conversations.
Thanks, Lauren. I hope the check clears for all those kind words you said. I'll get it in the mail today. Um,
Perfect. Good. I can always rescind them if I need to if the check doesn't clear. So, but
Thanks.
I want to talk to you today about a very hairy, scary, unpopular topic, and that is failure. And before we dive into that, I'd love to know more about how did you get into engineering and when did you move from individual contributor to engineering leader? So tell me a little bit more just about your journey, who you are.
Sure. I've been doing this over a couple decades by now. I have the gray hairs to prove it. I went to college. I was roommates with a guy I went to high school with. I was going to be a poli science major, um, and he asked me to take a computer science intro class with him, and I thought, why not? And I think the second day of the class, I went and changed my major to computer science because it just really fit my brain. It was what I was intended to do. I did that for just as an individual contributor 18 years. And then I was fortunate enough at SHIP to take the opportunity to go into people leadership. And I've been doing that for 4 or 5 years at this point.
It's awesome. When you made the move to a leader, was it another part of the brain? Did you have to exercise a new muscle or grow one that hadn't been there yet?
I definitely did. I had to get out of my own way, if that makes sense. Trust is a big deal to me, right? And one of the great things I've had at SHIP and now at Tilt is I have trust from my leaders and from my team. So I had to make sure I gave that trust to my team and got out of their way and let them be the ones to make the technical decisions, run with the architecture, and I was there for them versus someone having to be there for me.
Yeah.
So it took a little adjustment. It probably took me the first 3 or 4 months to realize that I didn't have to do everything as the people leader and from the technical side. I had these smart, brilliant people working with me to let them cook, right? Like if I start a restaurant and hire a brilliant chef, I don't need to be doing the cooking. I just need to sit back and watch the restaurant get filled up every day because I have these wonderful people making awesome things.
I love it. Let them cook. That's great. And as a leader, do you still crave or still need then leadership yourself, mentorship? I mean, as you continue to grow and move up in your career, do you think that that is something you still need some handholding throughout?
Oh, always. I know we're going to talk about failure, but I fail as a leader all the time, right? Not drastically, but I make mistakes and I learn from them. One of our mutual friends, Guillermo Fisher, has been a great mentor to me. I would say he's probably one of the reasons I'm in the position I'm in now as a senior director of engineering. Is he forced me to grow quickly because he had trust in me, but he has just been a great mentor. He'll really dislike hearing that if he listens to this, but he's been
He,
awesome.
he better listen. I'm gonna be chasing him down for that. Get those views up. Um, so moving into the topic of failure, have you ever heard of the word eustress? I just learned this word, so I'm curious. Have
I've
you ever
not.
heard this? Okay, so it's derived from the Greek word eu, which means good. It's the same as like euphoria, but it actually means good stress. So eustress is a good form of stress. And as we get into the topic of failure, having been a power lifter, and I just got into the sport myself a couple of years ago, so totally a novice over here, but we learn about failure in the context of that as it's a critical component to growth. And this type of eustress is a critical component of growth. And I wanted to talk to you about how do you understand failure and success? And maybe in the framework of powerlifting, or maybe in the professional context of growing and failing as a leader. But I'd love to know, is failure the opposite of success, or is it a critical component of it?
I think it's a critical component. I think, if we take powerlifting, if you really want to get stronger, you have to push your body to the limits. And sometimes that means, when you're squatting a lot of weight or benching a lot of weight, you're not going to get it. You're going to miss it, right? But you have to have those goals that kind of exceed your reach and keep pushing for it. And the only way I was ever successful in powerlifting was by always pushing my bodies to the limit. right? So I think the same thing applies in my professional career. Is I take calculated risk that I know aren't going to, take the systems down, but you have to push yourself. You have to move fast. You have to not worry about what if I didn't cross every T and dot every I, right? Let's get something out there. Let's get feedback on it, and it may not be right, but let's succeed from that failure. And I think a lot of times I've seen, probably more of the enterprise type companies, is there's this big fear of failure, which really slows everything and grinds it to a halt, which is utterly frustrating to myself because I just like to move, right? With some caution, right? Like you want to limit the blast radius of your failures. But there's just a fear at some companies that really turns me off to being at those places.
Yeah. Yeah. So you think that smaller companies have the advantage of being more nimble, more resilient, or do you think that enterprise companies are similarly nimble and resilient? They just don't want to find out that they're not. Maybe like I guess, where does the line get drawn between being nimble and not? Is it in the mind of the person who's calling the shots, or
I think it is. I mean, I think there are some large companies that are still taking chances, being nimble. For startups in general, you see them being riskier, right? Because they're trying to survive, so they have to take big chances. They have to take big swings, and sometimes those bets pay off, sometimes they don't. And what I've seen at some companies is as those bets do pay off, and you start getting in your customer base and your product market fit, you get kind of worried about losing that or like having a customer upset. So you get a lot more cautious and you tread a lot more carefully. And I see some reasoning for that, but it doesn't it doesn't keep you innovating. It doesn't keep the engineering side of things, I think, exciting, in my opinion.
do you think people are afraid of failure because of that concept of they're afraid of being ostracized from the tribe? I mean, I guess like there's a lot of talk about how our brains are still wired back to the Neolithic, Paleolithic days, fearing the saber-toothed tiger. But do you think that's a big reason why, maybe engineers, if we want to talk about it in that context, don't want to take risks? Or I'm just curious how you've understood failure today as an individual.
I think from my perspective, uh, earlier in my career, I was probably more prone to be very slow and take my time, be very methodical. I think a lot of that was kind of there was a lot of politics to go around at a company sometimes, right? So there was that fear of if you did mess up, it was going to be career limiting, right? Whereas the cultures I've been in the past 4 or 5 years in startups are it's a blameless culture. We all learn from it, right? There's still accountability. It doesn't mean you can go cause a P0 or a sub one and be like, okay, well, we're blameless around here. There's still accountability, right? And I think for me, having that trust and having that team around me that I know is going to support me makes me a little bit less scared of the saber-toothed tiger. I mean, there are people that are doing their own thing on their own, and they're doing a great job at it, right? But for me personally, I know I need to be surrounded with like-minded people that are going to support me, and dig me out when I fall in a hole. It was the same thing with powerlifting or when I did improvisation. Is I needed people that I could trust with as teammates or as improv partners. That when I did stumble or when I did make a mistake, they were there to make sure that I wasn't hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have to trust them. I mean, that's an interesting, I would love to dive more into that component of trust. I think the reason I like the fact that you brought up that doing it alone, I think is near impossible is because there is a lot of talk out there of being independent, this new solopreneur term. I've heard it way more since starting this company than ever before, that it should be a lone venture and you should stand and have your superhero moment alone. But I think that's bullshit. I think we need our people. We need our people in our corner. So I've never done improv before. I can imagine there's nothing scarier than standing on a stage and having to come up with things on the fly. Tell me, how did you get into improv and what is it really like? Again, I've only been in the audience, so I would love to know what it's like to stand in your shoes.
Sure. So I'm very much an introvert. Like doing this is really atypical of me, but I do it to kind of force myself into new spaces, right? So knowing that I want to be more of a people leader, I was going to be speaking in front of people, and I love comedy. I thought, well, why not go take some improv classes? I was fortunate enough to try out after and join the ensemble team and got to perform. When you're on stage, you really kind of just have to block everything out. remember kind of your goals are to yes and whoever starts off the scene and build something funny. And sometimes you get absurd with it, sometimes you don't. But it's really as long as you have confidence and are appearing to know what you're doing, the audience feels that you're in control.
So, have you ever done a type of arrangement where you've gotten the audience involved, like called on them to provide you with direction?
Yes, there's a game. I really feel bad. I can't remember, but you bring somebody on stage, and at certain times, you kind of stop your sentence. You stop mid sentence, and you ask the person out of the audience, "What's my next word?" Right? They know to give you the word. And one of my friends actually came up, and he was going to mess with me, and I threw him off with what I asked him, and like his voice cracked and went up high, which just led to more comedy because then I got to say the word he did the same way, which just had the crowd uproarious, right? So I love bringing people up there, and a lot of times there's another one where you ask the audience members to make the sound effects, and that usually goes off the rail, which just adds to more comedy of it.
That's awesome. Wow. And this is like this would for an introvert. Like I don't consider myself an introvert, but this would scare the shit out of me to stand on stage and try to think on my feet like that. And I mean, I prepare a lot of for my meetings even I try to prepare so I don't stumble or stutter or, make a I don't know, a faux pas or something. But I'm curious, so you did powerlifting and you competed nationally and won on multiple occasions and then you did this improv later in life. These are huge things that people will never do, which is so kudos to you. Like people will never put themselves in situations, a lot of folks, I should say, of being that vulnerable, that public, and having their failure, their opportunity for failure front and center. What is the next? Like, do you have a next big bucket item of like, okay, this is when I'm going to put myself in this next out of my comfort zone type of thing? Or are you already in it?
I'm probably already in it. I mean, this is probably no. I really, I really want to get where I can speak at like a DevOps days or a conference, like to my technical peers, to people who are going to quickly know if I'm an imposter or not. I think that would be a great challenge for me. I think I would really enjoy it because I do enjoy the networking and that kind of connection with your peers. It's difficult for me to do at times to get on stage, but once I'm up there, sometimes I rock with it, and sometimes
Yeah.
I crash and burn, which is okay too.
Do you fear the judgment still? I guess when you talk about going to a conference like that and speaking in front of peers, I guess there's two questions here. One, are you afraid that you're going to look stupid? You mentioned the imposter syndrome. I
Yeah.
fear every day that I look stupid, but I feel like as in the space I play, there isn't a lot of technical know-how. Like I think that's a big distinction of the seat that you're in versus the seat I'm in. Do you fear looking stupid? And if you do, I guess, how do you trust that it's okay to look dumb? Like, how do you get over that? Because you must have to do this. So I guess, do you have that concern being in front of your peers at a technical conference talking about something?
Certainly, I have that fear just walking down the aisle at a grocery store. But I do, but at the same time, I've worked with really brilliant people. Like I'm never the smartest person in the room, and generally I have their respect, and they feel like for whatever reason that I am a good engineer. So that helps me have that confidence that I do kind of know what I'm doing, even though I doubt myself a lot. So yeah, I mean, I would go into it knowing that I would look stupid, but I would still do it and have fun with it. You know, YOLO, right? You only live once. Go out and have some fun.
Are there this would be really interesting to know. Are there taboo topics or are there types of failures that engineers do not readily talk about? Like is there because I've never been in your world, I'm curious if there are classic like, oh, that's a boo-boo that we just don't discuss, with each other.
I think there probably are a couple. I think there's times that, I mean, I can only speak for myself. I think there's times that I've sent something to production without letting all the tests run, and oh, I should have let all the tests run. I created a problem. I think one of my biggest failures, probably in that regards, was I got paged at 2 a.m. one time when I worked at a healthcare company, and there's this billion-dollar uh, healthcare company that I'm sending code to. I was tired, and I sent them an infinite loop, right? So they're running all their claims through, and it's just running on the same claim for like an hour. and they didn't actually report it. I kind of like took a small nap, and then I woke up and like, oh, I forgot to do this thing. Please ask them to stop the job. I need to resend it. This is all in COBOL and, mini I-series, which is like a mini mainframe. It was totally embarrassing because middle of the morning, right? And then I send it, and then I'm sleeping at my desk like from 3 a.m. till 6 till people start coming in. I'm like, oh, you won't believe the night I had.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
infinite loops, not testing things. Those are probably taboos that we should catch ourselves, but we're all human, right? And I haven't made that mistake a third time. I probably made it a second time, but not a third time. So I do learn eventually.
You mentioned, before, like, you have to trust your team. You have to empower them to make decisions. How do you get them to trust you that they can come to you when they do screw up? Because we all screw up. How do you set the framework so they can come to you and, mea culpa?
Sure. I think the way that I see postmortems run these days is you go into it with like what was the problem, not who was the problem. I think taking that approach of like how do we get better from this? What can we do to prevent in the future? And let them know that it's okay, right? Like we don't want to make this mistake again, but we all learn from it. I think that's how I've had success building that trust is letting them know that I am empathetic. I do, in general, this may be a weird thing to say, but I love people who report to me. I love people that I'm on the team with at any company I'm at because I'm there and I'm part of it. I'm in the weeds with them, right? And I think in general that earnestness comes across. I hope.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, as I said in my intro, I do think you're one of those empathetic leaders that checks their ego at the door. And it is rare. I say it not just in engineering, but but in especially I do see in this space, there's a lot of fluffing of like feathers to look, kind of important. I think there's a lot of ego stroking, and it's a space where I also think it's really tough to be vulnerable because I do think there tends to be a higher IQ and not always as high of an EQ that allows for that kind of open communication or navigating some of the human dynamics. So, do you find that you have to do a lot of heavy lifting, not actual, but proverbially speaking, heavy lifting outside of work to foster and develop skill sets that allow you to be better at your job at work? Like, I guess, what do you do outside of work so that you can be the leader you need to for your team and be the engineer you need to? I guess, yeah, like I would love to know some of your rituals outside of work.
Yeah, I don't know if they're rituals. I think it is true. The way I was raised and the way I kind of learned from my dad and my mom, I just treat people like I want to be treated, right? Like I don't really care what your title is or what your role is. I'm down to give you a high five or talk to you or just have a conversation, no matter what your lot in life is, right? And I think that helps me go into anything without an ego, without thinking I'm the best person here because of whatever reason. I think that's just led me down this path, right? Of I just want to have a good life, right? I want other people to have a good life, and if you can get the idea of like I want to have the best life out of your mind, I think you can be successful and allow other people to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And I appreciate it. I guess we've talked about books in the past. Has there been a book that has really helped shape your understanding of what it means to be a great leader or a great human being in the workplace in particular? I'm curious if there's been a book that's really resonated with you in the business
Yeah,
context.
yeah. Managing Humans was a really great book. It helped me think through like how one-on-ones should be run, like right, like it gets you to me. It got me in that mindset of yeah, I'm the supervisor, right, or the director or whatever, but I work for these people, right? Like I want them to be successful. I always think of an org chart being inverted, right? Right, like these are the people making this place work, right? So every step you go down is just somebody that should be helping them be successful because that's going to make the company successful.
Yeah, that's great. I've never read that. So Managing Humans, I will add it to my list. Um, what about, in the topic of failure, and one way that people can really feel like a failure in the workplace is a performance improvement plan, otherwise affectionately known by the acronym a PIP. And I am curious because in a leadership role, that's often something that you have to come up against is people that are underperforming. Where do you begin? And I know there are so many nuances to everyone's situation, but I do think in this landscape where a lot of people have been let go, and not just in the traditional layoffs, but they've been scooted out, and economic situations have caused things to be tighter. So there's maybe a higher bar. But where do you begin when someone's underperforming? That's something that is also kind of a taboo topic. PIPs are sometimes known as a death knell.
It, they are. I mean, they're, it's only 3 letters, but it feels like a 4-letter word, right? I think it goes back to, when I talk about trust, I still talk about accountability, right? So part of that is setting the right expectations. And I've been really fortunate to work with great engineers that I can only think of a couple of performance issues I've had over the time I've been a people leader. But a lot of it is trying to get in front of it, right? Like if you're waiting until you're doing a quarterly review or every 6 month review to be like, oh, you're not really meeting the expectations of your role, you're kind of failing as a leader, in my opinion, right? As soon as you see somebody having trouble or not meeting the output that they were, or maybe they came into the role and it's just not for them, you need to have a heart to heart with them, right? Because they may be having something going on outside of work, right? And you need to let them be vulnerable and let them talk to you about it. Now, there's still the expectations and still the accountability, but a lot of it is just communicating that. And again, like if they can't rise to that occasion and meet the standards, you do have to part ways a lot sometimes, right? But it's a difficult thing. I struggled with it a lot when I got into a people leadership role of giving that critical feedback. I think that's the worst. One of the worst things as a manager you can do is not let somebody know where they're falling short. It's a disservice to them. You're really just being selfish because you don't want to have a difficult conversation. And I think you have to get that out of the way and start having difficult conversations as soon as you see an issue.
Yeah. I agree. I felt like Kim Scott's book Radical Candor really helped me understand, that leaders need to have the door swing both ways, right? Allowing to not only give feedback, but also allowing people to give their feedback to you as a leader, and have it go both ways so that there is that open dialogue. But I appreciate that. I think that it is one of the most difficult but most critically important thing to have the ability to communicate to others how they need to improve. We all get spinach in our teeth, right? Like we need to know when we're
Yeah.
screwing up and we can't see it because we don't have a mirror. And I think if a leader and design an arrangement that allows someone to feel psychologically safe to come and say, "Hey, I'm not doing well," or "I'm struggling," or ask, "How am I doing?" and be receptive of that feedback. But I feel like that's something that it does feel like I don't know if PIPs ever work, and that's something I keep wondering, is there ever a way in which they do? Because it seems like that's the final straw. And by that point, like if it's either given at a quarterly or it's at the very end of the kind of rope that the leader's on and saying like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I'm putting you out a PIP, but there wasn't that dialogue leading up to it. I wonder if they ever are successful. Usually I don't see that being the case.
I think in my career, like, and not even pips I've put people on, but I've seen people on pips. I maybe have seen it be successful once, maybe, and that's over 20 something years. So it is difficult. Like once you get to that point, usually somebody's already made up their mind, whether it's your direct leader or their direct leader or somebody that, we need to go through these steps for the end result that we already know, which is kind of unfortunate. It's not really a fair approach to it either, in my opinion, but it is the world we live in sometimes.
Yeah. Well, as we're in this world, speaking of, I guess, this world, um, layoffs are so prevalent right now. There's been so many people that have been impacted in 2023 and already the beginning of this year. And I'm curious, how do you help for people who are listening who have been impacted by a layoff, who might be feeling like a big failure because they were one of the chosen ones, even though it's not performance related, but we all get in our own heads? I guess what would be your words of encouragement of how to navigate the next steps here, and how to embrace maybe a different understanding so failure isn't that four-letter word?
Yeah, I think, I was part of it last year. I was laid off almost a year ago, a little bit less than a year, but I went through those feelings of like, why was it me? Why was I part of it? And I guess the best advice I can tell people is like, know who you are, not what the company thought of you, or what you think the company thought of you, because you don't really know. Just trust in yourself, trust in your skills, continue to grow while you have this time away from a job, right? Like I spent a lot of time at cloudguru.com working on my AWS and GCP skills, right? Because I want to be more marketable. So work on yourself as much as you can, and also enjoy the pro leisure circuit, as they call it, until that job comes knocking. I know that's probably a privileged place to say that, where you can do that for a couple of months. But just get out there and hustle and make yourself more marketable.
Yeah. What about meeting people? Do you think that's also a critical component too of like it can be really hard to network, and network sounds so gross, the hello, my name is kind of comes to mind, but it doesn't have to be. Do you think I notice in my world that especially engineers tend to struggle with reaching out to people to meet and have a virtual coffee or an in-person beer or something, because it's this, again, it's not a natural maybe inclination or a muscle that has been frequently exercised. Have you found that you've had to learn how to build up that muscle and continue to foster good relationships with your network, laid off or not?
I have. I would recommend like finding a local DevOps day. I know Birmingham's getting one going here soon. I'd recommend anybody going to it. Those have been great to meet people you don't know already. Find local user groups for technologies you're interested in. And then if there's virtual conferences or something you want to go to, like take that chance. Networking is crucial to this industry. It's crucial to careers. Like the friends or associates I made while I was at Shift have been really critical to my post Shift career. Right, there's no getting around that. And networking can't be understated how important it is at this time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, as we are in still the beginning months of this year, what is top of mind for you in 2024? What are you excited about tackling, looking forward to failing at? Like what's top of mind?
Oh, I'm just so at my new job, I started a few months ago. I'm working with some new technologies, which is one of my favorite things. Like if I just take a step back, I started out as a COBOL engineer, um, and then I got offered a role doing Java, and I was like, I don't know if I can make that transition. And some advice I got from the head of the department in college is, it all comes down to three types of statements: declarative, conditional, and iterative. And I kind of started holding that in my mind. So I'll program in any language at this point, because I know it all just comes down to learning the syntax. But I think this year is really about, getting the trust of my team, continue to build those relationships, and being part of this fun journey we're having at Tilt, and watching us grow and um, continue down that path is really my main focus this year.
That's awesome. Well, I have to say, I'm so grateful that you joined me today, and I really appreciate everything you shared because as somebody who's on the daily experiencing micro or large failures, having never done a lot of this stuff before, building a business, or, as I mentioned, taking up powerlifting and doing my darndest to
Yeah.
fail at that each week, I think that I've learned how to appreciate failure. Doesn't mean I love the feeling of it. In fact, it sucks most of the time, but there are the reassurances that it leads to something greater. And I think a lot of what you touched on today of how you fail in front of a team and how that actually maybe helps you grow from it with your team and builds that trust, how you trust them to catch you when you might fall, or when you might fall with weights, or whether you might fall with a code commit, or any number of things, but that you really need great people in your corner, and you're one of those great people for me as I've been on this journey. So I wanted to say, thank you for all of the support, because like I said, I definitely feel there's a saber-toothed tiger around the corner, but I've got my tribe and I should be okay. So thank you for sharing what you did today and for being in my corner.
Well, thank you, Lauren. I treasure our friendship is a wonderful thing. You know, the Zoom culture is great, right? Because that's really how we became friends, is being able to communicate while we were doing some other business related things. But I'm in your corner. I'll fight off any saber tooth tiger because you're killing it. You're going to keep killing it. But if I can be some small way help it along the way, I'm there for you.
Same. Well, thank you again. I appreciate every minute of today for joining me on Cupalo Conversations. And hopefully, this is the beginning of many more podcasts in your new extroverted lifestyle.
Well, that's terrifying, but thank you very much for having me. It's been great, and I hope you don't have to edit it down to like 2 minutes.
No, not at all. At least three.